The comedian Chevy Chase has long been known for his talent and for revolutionizing American comedy through his roles on SNL in the 70s and in blockbuster films. But he's also gained a reputation for being difficult to work with, due to reports of volatile behavior and verbal abuse towards co-stars. In recent years, Chase has been candidly addressing this reputation in interviews, acknowledging his past behavior. Join Factsverse as we take a deep dive into Chase addressing his problematic conduct. Trouble at SNL. Chevy Chase was a pivotal member of the original Saturday Night Live cast in 1975. As one of the newly hired, not ready for primetime players, Chase immediately stood out with his confident persona and comedic instincts. In the live sketch comedy format, Chase shined in roles that allowed him to wing his witty quips and calmly break character. He was a perfect fit for the landmark Weekend Update segment, where his deadpan newscasting brought the perfect tone of satire. His breakout performances helped elevate SNL into a national phenomenon. But as the show's popularity exploded, troubles began percolating behind the scenes. According to accounts from fellow cast members, it didn't take long for Chase's ego to inflate alongside his fame. As one of the show's biggest stars, Chase reportedly grew frustrated with having to cede creative control. He chafed at Lorne Michaels' role as the final decision-maker, and he began to disregard other performers' input on sketches. Tensions seemed to peak as Chase filmed his first major starring roles in movies like Foul Play and Caddyshack. With these huge box office hits, Chase's celebrity skyrocketed and only reinforced his belief that he was SNL's marquee name. By many accounts, he acted increasingly dismissive towards the cast and the writers, disrupting rehearsals with off-script antics. Lorne Michaels bore the brunt of Chase's escalating stubbornness as the producer insisted on maintaining SNL's collaborative spirit. After just one season, he caused shockwaves as the first SNL cast member to leave of their own accord. While citing a desire to spend more time with his family, behind the scenes it was clear Chase had worn out his welcome. His brief but pivotal SNL tenure saw the earliest signs of how his enormous abilities were hindered by a sense of superiority over colleagues. Trouble on Community. When Chevy Chase joined the cast of Community in 2009, he stepped into another high-profile comedic collaboration. Created by Dan Harmon, the NBC sitcom revolved around an eclectic group at a community college. They brought in Chase to portray Pierce Hawthorne, a wealthy alum who infused the study group with his eccentric personality. For Harmon, having a comedy legend of Chase's caliber attached elevated the show's reputation. But it didn't take long for issues to resurface. Chase bristled at Harmon's leadership and chafed under his vision. Chevy pushed for more scenes focused only on his character. When creative differences emerged, tensions between the two rose considerably. As Community's acclaim grew, so too did Chase's impatience. Reports indicate he directed particularly inappropriate remarks at Donald Glover, who played Troy Barnes. Then a rising young comedian, Glover threatened Chase's fragile ego. On set, Chase allegedly aimed a constant stream of crude jokes and deliberate attempts to undermine Glover during filming. Other cast and crew began to feel the brunt of Chase's disrespectful behavior too. The ill will came to a head in 2012 during a heated disagreement over Pierce's storylines. Chase unleashed a barrage of insults with particularly offensive racial epithets directed at Harmon. The slur-filled tirade horrified witnesses and forced Chase to issue a public apology. But the incident caused irreparable damage and led to an increasing demand for his removal from the series. After 3 seasons of disruptions, Community's creative team had clearly exhausted their tolerance. At nearly 70 years old, Chase was still proving incapable of setting ego aside or controlling volatile impulses. His exit reinforced a reputation as toxic to any production. Admitting fault but not changing. In the decades since his turbulent exits from SNL and then Community, Chevy Chase found himself facing unrelenting criticism about his reputed conduct on set. As more actors and crew members came forward to recount encounters of disrespect, abuse, and unprofessional behavior, Chase slowly developed an image as one of the most toxic forces in Hollywood. But in recent years, the veteran comedian has engaged more directly with his widespread perception of him as difficult. In interviews in 2022, at age 78, Chase acknowledged publicly for the first time that many see him rightly as a jerk. But despite addressing the label, he dismissed probing on the substance and validity of accusations against him. When asked if he felt former colleagues had any cause to perceive him that way, Chase minimized the question with indifference. He failed to exhibit sincerity or ownership in comprehending how deeply hurtful mistreatment of others had been. He also linked his tendencies to trauma endured from an abusive stepfather in his youth. While a painful childhood may help provide context, Chase stopped well short of introspection. He positioned misconduct as predetermined results of his upbringing rather than a character flaw amenable to change. Even following a 2021 health scare that required intensive hospitalization, he joked flippantly about, quote, losing his heart without regard for how this came across. Facing health issues and aging in comedy. In February 2021, at age 77, he faced a major health scare that confronted the inevitable realities of aging. He spent over 5 weeks in urgent hospitalization for near-fatal heart failure. The seriousness of the cardiac event couldn't be ignored, despite his joking about it, coming amidst an entertainment landscape increasingly unkind to veteran actors sliding out of their commercially bankable years. Chase had long since ceaselessly pushed his body through pratfalls and stunts, but the toll of decades abusing his physique was becoming evident. Now in his late 70s, he found himself confronting a Hollywood system that rewards youth and rapidly phases out all but the most extraordinary elder actors. Like many of his predecessors, Chase navigated a bumpy transition to scarce supporting gigs or advisory work. Brief spots in projects like the underwhelming 2015 Vacation sequel and Netflix's little-seen road trip comedy The Last Laugh highlighted these changing circumstances. Where contemporaries Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, Steve Martin, and Martin Short adapted output to evolve with their maturing audience, Chase struggled to tailor his act accordingly. A complicated legacy. After over 5 decades immersed in the industry, Chevy Chase has solidified himself as an indelible, if contradictory, figure in Hollywood history. He played an integral role in bringing subversive comedy to mainstream America as one of the original 7 members of SNL. He became one of the biggest movie stars of the 80s, with mainstream hits like Caddyshack, Fletch, Vacation, and Three Amigos. But his professional achievements exist in perpetual counterbalance with a conduct record that gives many of us pause. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite Chevy Chase movie? Let us know in the comments section below.